I didn't know what she meant at first when her older sister took a deep breath and said, "I've been holding this in." The sentence landed between us like a dropped glass, sharp, sudden, unfinished. I remember thinking it wasn't meant for me, and somehow knowing it was. It happened at the repair shop where I worked mornings while pretending my 20s were temporary. A narrow place that always smelled like oil and burnt coffee, radios stacked like bricks behind the counter. Her sister, Nadia, used to bring her car in every few months, always apologetic, always late. That day she came with someone else. Her older sister. She stood just behind Nadia's shoulder, quiet in a way that didn't ask permission. Mid-40s, maybe older. No dramatic clothes, just a long coat she didn't take off, like she wasn't sure how long she planned to stay. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands already escaping. She watched me work without pretending not to. That alone made my hands feel suddenly unfamiliar. Nadia did most of the talking. She always did. Her voice filled space easily, explaining the rattle in the engine, joking about how she ignored it too long. I nodded, asked the usual questions, typed notes I didn't need. The older sister leaned against the counter, fingers wrapped around a paper cup she wasn't drinking from. Every now and then, I felt her eyes move. Not curious, assessing, like she was measuring something invisible and deciding not to comment on it. When I finished checking the car, there was an awkward pause, the kind that happens when the conversation should end but doesn't. Nadia glanced at her watch, then at her sister. "I need to take this call," she said, already stepping outside. "I'll be right back." The bell on the door chimed, and suddenly it was just us. The shop felt too quiet without the radio. She cleared her throat, then didn't speak, adjusted her grip on the cup. I wiped my hands on a rag that was already clean. "She worries," I said, pointing toward the door. It came out softer than I intended. "About the car. About everything." Her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "She always has," she said. Then, after a beat, "Someone has to." I nodded, though I didn't know what I was agreeing to. She looked around the shop, at the half-fixed engines, the scattered tools. "You like it here?" she asked. It was a normal question. The way she asked it wasn't. Yeah, I think so," I said. "It's honest work. Things either run or they don't." She considered that. Her eyes stayed on my face a moment too long. I noticed a thin silver ring on her finger, worn smooth, like it had been turned over 1,000 times. "That must be nice," she said. "Clear outcomes." Another pause. Longer this time. She took a breath then, a real one. Slow. Measured. Her shoulders lifted slightly, then settled. That's when she said it. "I've been holding this in." I waited. Didn't know what else to do. But she shook her head, as if correcting herself. "Not here. Not now." A quiet laugh followed, embarrassed, almost private. "Sorry. I shouldn't say things like that to strangers." "It's okay," I said. Too quickly. "I don't mind." She looked at me then. Really looked. Something passed between us, recognition, maybe, or the absence of it. Nadia came back in a moment later, loud and apologetic again, breaking whatever fragile thing had formed. The older sister stepped back, polite, composed, already retreating. Before they left, she touched the counter lightly with her fingertips, right where I'd been standing. That night, lying in bed, I kept replaying the way she'd inhaled before speaking, like she was standing on the edge of something and chose, at the last second, not to jump. It was late afternoon, the kind of hour where the shop light turns yellow and everything feels unfinished. I was halfway under a sedan when I heard the bell on the door. I knew it was her before I slid out. There was a pause in the air, a hesitation, like someone deciding whether to stay. She stood by the counter, coat folded over her arm this time. Without it, she looked smaller. Not fragile, just human. Her sleeves were pushed up slightly, revealing wrists that looked tired, like they carried more than they showed. "I hope this is okay," she said. Nadia asked me to pick the car up. Her voice was steadier than before, guarded, like she'd practiced it on the way over. "Yeah," I said. "It's ready." I explained what I'd fixed, what still needed attention, using the same words I always did. She listened closely, nodding at the right places. When I handed her the keys, our fingers brushed. Just for a second. She didn't pull away, but she didn't linger either. I don't know anything about cars, she admitted, almost apologetically. I just trust that people know what they're doing. That's a lot of trust, I said. She let out a quiet laugh at that, short, surprised. It sounded like she hadn't meant to. Her hand came up to her mouth automatically, as if to catch it before it escaped. Not really, she said. It's just easier than worrying. We stood there too long again. I noticed the faint crease between her eyebrows, the kind that comes from years of thinking before speaking. The silver ring was still there. She kept turning it slowly with her thumb. You look tired, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted, sharp, not offended, just alert. Then something in her softened. Is it that obvious? Only if you're paying attention, I said. She looked down at her hands. I don't sleep much these days. A pause. Too many thoughts that don't know where to go. I didn't ask what they were. I felt like asking would make them disappear. Instead, I said, there's a cafe next door. They stay open late. If you ever need a place to sit without being needed. The words surprised both of us. She studied me for a moment, like she was weighing the cost of something invisible. Then she nodded, once. That's kind of you, she said. You didn't have to say that. I know. Another pause. Not awkward this time. Heavy. She reached for her coat, hesitated, then set it back down. About the other day, she said quietly. What I said. I didn't mean to put anything on you. You didn't, I said, and meant it. But I think sometimes saying things out loud is how you keep them from getting heavier. She breathed out slowly. Not a sigh. Something closer to relief. Maybe, she said. Or maybe it's how you realize they already are. When she finally left, she turned back at the door. Just once. Our eyes met, held. No smile. No explanation. I watched the door close behind her, and for the rest of the evening, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she almost stayed. Not the dramatic kind. No thunder, no warning. Just a steady, soaking rain that made the streetlights blur and turned the shop windows into mirrors. I was closing up when I saw her across the street, standing under the cafe awning like she'd been placed there on purpose. She looked up when I crossed over, surprised, then relieved. Like she'd been waiting without admitting it to herself. I didn't know if you'd still be here, she said. They don't pay me enough to leave early, I said. She smiled at that, small and tired. The cafe was nearly empty. One table occupied by a couple arguing in whispers. The rest of the room hummed softly, rain ticking against the glass. We sat across from each other, cups cooling between us. She wrapped both hands around hers, even though the coffee was too hot. I noticed the faint redness on her knuckles, the way her shoulders stayed slightly raised, like she was bracing for impact. You ever feel like, she began, then stopped, cleared her throat. Like your life is organized around other people's needs. I nodded, though my reasons were simpler than hers. Yeah. She watched me for a moment. That was a lie, she said gently. You hesitated. I laughed under my breath. Okay, maybe not like you. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's what I thought. Silence settled. Not uncomfortable. Tense. I could feel it pressing in. Her phone buzzed on the table. She didn't look at it right away. When she finally did, her jaw tightened. She turned the screen face down. Everything okay? I asked. Just someone who doesn't know when to stop, she said. Or maybe I don't know how to say it clearly. The rain grew heavier. A leak started near the window, water dripping steadily into a metal bucket. The barista slid over with an apologetic shrug. She stood suddenly. I should go? Before the roads get worse. Yeah, I said. Too quickly again. Outside, the rain soaked us immediately. She fumbled with her keys, hands unsteady. Without thinking, I stepped closer, holding the edge of my jacket over her head. Our shoulders touched. I felt the warmth of her through the thin fabric, the way she stilled when she realized how close we were. She looked up at me. Her eyes searched my face, then dropped to my mouth. Just for a second. I shouldn't, she said, not finishing the sentence. I know, I replied, and meant more than one thing. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Her hand brushed mine, accidental or not. I couldn't tell. Her fingers curled slightly, like she might grab hold. For a moment, the world narrowed to the space between us. The rain, her breath, the choice hanging there, unspoken. She stepped back first. Thank you, she said, for the jacket, or for not moving closer. She drove away a minute later, taillights disappearing into the blur. I stood there longer than I needed to, rain soaking through my shoes. All night, I kept replaying the way her hand almost stayed in mine, and wondering what would have happened if I hadn't let her go. We didn't see each other for almost 2 weeks after that. Not on purpose. Not because either of us said anything. Life just resumed. Cars broke. Days passed. The cafe stayed open late. The rain stopped. Then she showed up one evening just before closing, standing inside the door like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be there anymore. I don't need the car, she said before I could ask. I just needed to talk. I locked the door behind her. Not dramatically, just turned the sign to closed and flipped the latch like I always did. The click sounded louder than it should have. We stood there, a few feet apart. No counter between us this time. No excuse to keep moving. You've been quiet, I said. So have you, she replied. That was the problem. The silence had learned how to speak for us. She walked slowly around the shop, fingers trailing along the edge of a workbench. I noticed she'd cut her hair. Not much, just enough to signal something had shifted. I keep thinking about that night, she said, finally. And then I tell myself I'm imagining it, that I made it heavier than it was. You didn't, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. She stopped, didn't turn around. That's not comforting. I waited. Let her have the space. She faced me then. Really faced me. No practiced calm. No careful tone. What are we doing? She asked quietly. Because I don't recognize it. And I don't know what to call it without feeling ridiculous. I swallowed. I don't think we're doing anything. Her mouth tightened. That's the part that scares me. Another stretch of silence. Long enough that I could hear the hum of the lights, the distant sound of traffic outside. She rubbed her thumb against the ring again, faster this time. I'm not confused about wanting things, she said. I'm confused about why I'm still noticing them. I didn't respond. If I spoke, I knew it would tip something. She stepped closer. Not touching, just close enough that I could see the faint lines near her eyes. The exhaustion she carried without complaint. You look at me like you're waiting, she said. And I don't know what you think you're waiting for. I don't know either, I admitted. Her shoulders sagged slightly at that. Like the honesty weighed something down instead of lifting it. This isn't fair to you, she said. Or to me. Or to anyone who exists outside this room. I know, I said again. And hated how easy it was. She nodded, as if confirming something she'd already decided. Took a step back. Then another. I need this to stop feeling like a question, she said. Because questions turn into habits. She reached for the door, hesitated, then looked at me one last time. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. She never did. I don't regret meeting you, she said. I regret how quiet it made everything else. The bell chimed as she left. I stood there long after the shop went still, realizing the worst part wasn't that she hadn't touched me. It was that she knew exactly why she wanted to. The voicemail came 3 days later. I didn't recognize the number at first. Almost didn't listen to it. Just another missed call stacked between spam and customers asking if their cars were ready yet. But her voice, low, careful, made my chest tighten before I understood why. I don't know why I'm telling you this, she said. A pause. The sound of fabric shifting, like she'd changed position. You don't need to call me back. I just needed to put it somewhere that wasn't inside me anymore. I leaned against the workbench, rag still in my hand. There was someone, she continued. A long time ago, before everything settled into what it is now. Another pause, longer this time. He was younger than me too. Not by much, but enough that everyone noticed. I closed my eyes. He used to wait for me the way you do, she said, and didn't explain how she knew that about me. Like time was something he could afford to spend. The shop felt suddenly smaller. He died, she said. Just like that. No build-up. No cushioning. An accident. Stupid, fast, irreversible. I felt the words land somewhere below my ribs. I stayed, she went on. I stayed where I was. With the life I'd already built. I told myself that was maturity. Responsibility. Her breath hitched, barely. But some nights I still wonder if I just got very good at surviving instead of choosing. The voicemail ended there. No goodbye. I didn't move for a long time. Didn't wipe my hands. Didn't breathe right. When I finally looked up, the shop clock said I'd lost almost 20 minutes. She came by the next evening, as if the message hadn't been seismic, as if she hadn't quietly rearranged the way I understood everything. I shouldn't have said that, she said before I could speak. I'm sorry. You don't have to be, I replied, and meant it in a way that scared me. We didn't sit. We didn't close the door. We stood near the entrance, lights spilling in from outside, like either of us might leave at any moment. You remind me of him, she said, not meeting my eyes. Not in the obvious ways. In the way you notice. In the way you wait without asking for anything. I swallowed. I don't want to be a memory. She looked at me then. Really looked. Something like grief and relief crossed her face at the same time. I know, she said. That's the problem. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't check it. I don't think this is about age, she added quietly. I think it's about timing. And I've learned not to trust mine. I nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't try to save us from the truth she was handing me. She stepped closer. Not close enough to touch. Close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something subtle, worn down by the day. Thank you for listening, she said. For not turning this into something it isn't. And what is it? I asked. She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Something that reminded me I'm still capable of wanting, she said. And that's not nothing. She left a moment later, the bell chiming softly behind her. I stood there, holding the echo of her voice, realizing the shift hadn't been the story she told me. It was the fact that she trusted me with the part of her that never healed. She didn't come back for a week. I told myself that was the point. That the voicemail, the standing too close, the way she'd said wanting like it was a confession, those were endings, not invitations. Then one evening, the power went out. Not the whole block. Just the shop. The lights cut mid-sentence, radio dying into a soft click. I stood there in the sudden dim, hands useless, thinking about how fragile everything actually was. The door opened a minute later. She stepped inside, framed by the streetlight behind her. No coat. Hair damp, like she'd walked instead of driven. I saw the lights go out, she said. I didn't know if you'd still be here. I said. I usually am. She nodded, like that confirmed something. We didn't turn the sign. Didn't lock the door. The darkness made it feel private anyway. I almost didn't come, she said. I kept telling myself I'd already said too much. You didn't say the wrong thing, I replied. She looked around, then sat on the low stool near the workbench. The one customers never used. I sat on the crate across from her, close enough that our knees almost touched. I've spent a long time making choices that don't disturb anything, she said. And then you happened. And suddenly everything felt noticeable again. I waited. Let her keep the floor. I don't want to repeat old patterns, she continued. I don't want to confuse comfort with courage. She finally met my eyes. But I also don't want to pretend this hasn't already changed me. Something in my chest loosened. I don't need promises, I said. I just don't want to be invisible. She reached out then. Not to my face. To my hand, resting open on my knee. Her fingers hovered for a second, still deciding, before settling there. Warm. Steady. You were never invisible, she said quietly. That's what frightened me. We stayed like that. No rush. The hum of the city filtered in through the open door. Somewhere a car passed. Somewhere else, life kept going without us. She leaned her forehead against my shoulder. Just rested it there, like she was tired of holding herself upright. I didn't move. Didn't pull her closer. Just existed where she'd placed herself. This doesn't fix anything, she murmured. I know, I said. But it feels honest, she added. Yes, I said. That was the easiest answer I'd given her. After a while, she lifted her head. Our eyes met. No urgency. No fear. Just recognition. I think we should take this slowly, she said. I smiled barely. I don't know how to do it any other way. She squeezed my hand once before letting go. Stood. Smoothed her sleeves like she always did when she needed composure. I'll see you, she said. Not soon. Not around. Just that. Yeah, I replied. You will. She walked out into the restored light, the shop humming back to life behind her. A&F for the first time, the quiet didn't feel like loss. It felt like something we'd chosen together. I'm telling this from some distance now. Not because it ended badly, but because it didn't need an ending the way stories usually do. We never labeled what happened between us. That was the quiet agreement. No grand shift. No moment where the world rearranged itself to make room. Just a series of choices that leaned slightly toward honesty instead of fear. She still came by the shop, sometimes for the car, sometimes just to sit in the doorway while I finished up, the radio low, the afternoon dragging its feet. We learned how to exist in the same space without reaching for more than we could hold. What changed in me was subtle, but permanent. I stopped mistaking intensity for meaning. I learned that waiting doesn't always mean longing. Sometimes it means respect. Sometimes it means letting someone arrive at themselves without pushing. What changed in her was quieter still. She laughed more easily. Not louder, just without checking first. She slept better, she said once, like it was an afterthought. And she stopped turning the ring on her finger quite so often. We never talked about the man she lost again. We didn't need to. His absence wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a truth that had finally been acknowledged, then gently set down. I realized something watching her one evening, standing in the shop light, reading a message on her phone and deciding, very deliberately, not to answer it right away. Love, I think, isn't about urgency. It's about permission. About making space without demanding it be filled. The moment that stays with me most isn't a touch or a look. It's something smaller. One night, as she was leaving, she paused at the door, took a breath. The same kind she'd taken the first time we met. Measured, careful. But this time, she didn't stop herself. I'm glad I didn't keep holding everything in, she said. Neither of us smiled. We didn't need to. What this taught me. That some connections aren't meant to burn fast or consume your life. Some are meant to sit with you. Change the way you listen, the way you notice, the way you let silence speak without rushing to fill it. We didn't become a story people point at and call dramatic. We became something steadier, something earned. And maybe that's the kind of love that lasts the longest. Not the kind that sweeps you away, but the kind that lets you stay. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?